All right, mic check, mic check. Elvis was a hero to most, but he never meant to me. You see, straight up racist, the sucker was simple and plain. Mother, him and John Wayne, cause I'm black and I'm proud. I'm ready and hyped cause I'm amped. Most of my heroes don't peer on no stamp. Boom, classic Chuck D, a public enemy. Hello, America. Hello, world. Hello, you. It is your new best friend, Kashmir, California. I am back with the Pod is Good podcast, aka the Notorious PIG, episode 55. Pod is good, and all the time. If you know, you know. If you don't, keep listening. You will learn. Today, I got my homie, Pastor Reggie Brown, back in the building to discuss the complexities of being black in America and Christian in America. What happens when those two worlds collide? It's not always as easy as people think. The experience of black people, especially black Christians, is very complex on this here land. Today, we will talk about it. Let's get it going. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, Pastor Reggie Brown, to the studio. How you doing,
Thank
my
you so
guy?
much. I'm doing well. Thank you all so much for having me back. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it, my brother. I really appreciate it. I
Wouldn't be
really
a show
do.
if we didn't have you back, man. We had a great episode before, and I know it's going to be that again. So let's begin, sir. First off, so that people, just in case they missed before, let's just talk about real quick how you were influenced to become a pastor.
Wow. My calling, man, came early on in life, man. You know what I mean? I knew I was saved at 15, called to preach pastor at 15, so to speak. I knew from the beginning what it would be. I didn't know what it would look like, all right, but I knew what it would be.
You knew what it'd be.
So I ended up accepting my calling at 19 while I was in the military at Taegu Air Base, Korea.
Mm.
Then I left Korea, came to California. Through California, I met Pastor Lee. So I ended up at Mount Calvary. Ended up getting licensed in 91. Then I got ordained in 96. And so I started pastoring, I want to say 2006, 2005, 2006, 2006, 2006, I believe, somewhere around there. And, been that ever since, man, ever since.
So you have spent your time on this earth, years being a Christian, and probably more years being black. So you have a great wealth of knowledge to explore this conversation with me. I can't remember where I was. I might have been on the plane, but I was thinking about that moment, that social media disaster that happened with H&M
Mm,
a few years back when they had the young black boy on the shirt and said something about a monkey. I can't remember what it
right.
said, but it basically spoke about a monkey. And it brought up this thought that I had been having off and on throughout the years of how these stereotypes about black people have been almost like not only promoted, but just kind of like they linger generations on, right? So I thought about fried chicken. They say, "Oh, black people, y'all love fried chicken," and they make it sound like such a bad thing, right? But
Right, right, right,
everybody eats everybody eats fried chicken, right? I
right,
mean, you go to parts of Asia, Portugal, like people eat fried chicken and they love it.
right.
But it's degrading when you say it about us. They say, "Oh, y'all love watermelon. Whoo-hoo! Y'all eat some watermelon up." But you go to some of the most posh restaurants and they have watermelon beet arugula salad, and it's like, it's fine dining.
Right.
But y'all black people is different. And it made me think about the monkey and how a monkey is one of the smartest animals in the kingdom.
Right.
It's one of the most capable in the kingdom. It's adorned. People praise the monkey. Chinese praise. I mean, like the monkey is a beautiful animal. But
Right.
yet, if you just heard the words, you a monkey, you already know they're talking about a black person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tell me about that. What are your thoughts on how these stereotypes, number one, create a certain view of black people, and why they continue to grow and fester throughout generations, even though we know that they make no sense.
Well, you got to remember, man. The reality is one of the issues about race is always image, right? And that's why you get the minstrels and all those kind of things, blackface, and the surrounding things like that, why to demonstrate that somehow or another the African American is not only just darker but dumber.
Hmm.
All right, why? Because you think about the monkey, wild beast, wild animal.
Yeah.
Though he's intellectual, can't articulate himself, not smart enough to talk, just close enough to be there, but not all the way there, so to speak. And you know what I mean. And so then all of a sudden there are things that we've allowed the dominant culture to co-opt, to take, and to use against us negatively that came from slavery, right?
Hmm.
Think about the things you just talked about, far as the food is concerned, chicken, fried chicken at that, right? So all of these things from the soul food context is a bridge from slavery that our forefathers had to eat, foreparents rather had to eat, making do with scraps in order to feed the family and that kind of thing. So how do you make it? How do you make it something good? Fry it,
Yeah.
right? And so everything tastes good fried. You know what I mean?
Funny you say that too, because they always say on the show Chopped on the Food Network, when someone goes and fries something, they're like, "Oh, that was really smart." But
Right.
but it's never looked at like, wow, those slaves were really smart. They took something that no one really wanted and they fried it to make it taste. They were really intelligent. It's like, nah, they were just getting by,
Well,
basically.
absolutely. Frying it with flavor. You know what I mean? Cooking with
Yeah,
flavor.
yeah,
This is how I don't eat it, but this is how people eat chitlins. You know what I mean? They come to eat other things that was thrown out by
right,
others that were discarded.
yeah,
Now, man, think about it. There was a day you could go buy things like oxtails and all of those very cheap.
yeah.
Now, because the dominant culture has caught on to the flavor we've added to it, you know what I mean?
Man,
Now everybody want a plate from the picnic, even if they don't really like the people at the picnic. You know what I'm
that's
saying?
such a
So
fact.
they ain't got like they ain't got like us to eat our food, and that kind of
Everybody
thing.
want to play from the picnic. That's a fact.
Right. You know what I mean? But that is the beauty of us, of our people, man,
Mm,
having to take the worst of the life and made the best out of it. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
again, I think the biggest component what we're talking about now is how they've taken the imagery and made it negatively.
Hmm.
I mean, and I think that's the thing we continue to fight against. I believe it was Dr. King who said the difference between the African American and every other person who was looked at like a slave is the African American was the first slave group where their color became the stigma.
Right,
You know what I mean? So
right.
it attached the color to the image that
Yeah,
was wrong. That's what separates us from the Jews of the Bible, from the Jews in Germany and all of those kind of things. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. This is gonna kind of somehow segue us into this idea today. And I've heard this from people who are either not Christians or they're Muslims, or they just don't believe in, the white Christianity as they call it, but kind of birthed in that same place or time span. You have these stereotypes being given to this group of people who they're being degraded and minimalized and whatnot. And during that time, they're also given a Bible, which they get to learn. It's not like we didn't know nothing, but you know how what they think.
Right,
Learn, um, learn God.
right,
Learn the ways of the Christian way and the direction that this country is going to be built upon, which was used, obviously, as we all know, to kind of keep us in invisible shackles,
right.
because they highlighted certain areas that made them up here and us down here, and so now
Right.
you have um, this new awakening of
Hmm.
certain people that look at it like, well, how can I have the same God that at one point the people, the men who castrated my foreparents or my forefathers brought to me?
Right.
Like,
I,
how, thoughts?
I think that is one of the biggest myths
Hmm.
that we've been taught, right, throughout slavery, right? we've been taught that the Africans got slavery from whites,
Right.
right? That's the
Right.
first myth. When it was actually whites who got got Christianity from whites. It actually was whites who got Christianity from Africans.
Right.
Let that be
The
known first.
Ethiopians, right?
Right. Not only the Ethiopians, man, but when you look at the book of Acts, right?
Hmm.
Acts chapter 2, especially, when it talked about all of those nations, most of those nations were in Africa,
Yeah.
right? As a matter of fact, I was just looking at one reading. I wish I could remember the author who suggested that there were uh, Christian slaves who were brought to the Americas as well. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And so you got to understand that as well. Another thing is, if by chance whites really thought that Christianity was a white person's religion, why would they force the color then? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And then why would they hide certain passages from slaves?
Yeah.
Right? So they didn't want slaves to read certain passages. Why? Because though the Bible is about salvation, it's also about liberation.
Mm.
Jesus even said, I came to set the captives free.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so those are things we don't like to talk about. Another thing we don't like to talk about, especially when we're talking to Muslims or any other religious group, is that show me another group who's done more to emancipate African Americans other than Christians in America.
Hmm.
You won't find any. The civil
Yeah.
rights movement, Christian. While I'm not degrading or knocking our Muslim brothers, and I call them that, man, because I do, though I disagree with them on religion and heaven and those principles, I
Yeah.
do appreciate those core value, moral things they teach.
Absolutely.
They're men, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the thing that I wholeheartedly disagree with them on is that stance about what they did during the struggle. Notice, if you will, while African American Christians were fighting for the struggle, most of your Muslim groups were relegated to the background. They didn't believe really in getting involved in that way.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Even the great Malcolm X was literally kicked out of the nation for that very reason, right? Kicked
Wow.
out of the nation for beginning to wanting to do a push politically and things like that to change political landscapes and those things. You know what I mean? So those are the things again people don't talk about, don't deal with, because again we like to grab what sounds good in a minute. You know what I mean? Without sitting
Yeah.
down and having deep dialogue, deep context. We all know Jesus was a person of color. We all know there's no Caucasian, really, man, who writes any book of the Bible. Some people suggest maybe Luke was one, but even he was probably a person of color as well. And so we all know those things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's foolish for us to even continue to keep the argument up. And most people say it because they say it was used on slaves, right? It was
Yeah.
used on slaves. Absolutely. You can't deny that fact that they used slavery and Christianity as a whip for slaves. But at the same time, it was also used as a vehicle for slaves to get out of slavery.
So you bring up a great point. You say oftentimes we don't really take a deep dive into those, sidewalk conversations. So I feel like we got time today. Let's let's take some deep dives. Let's open those chapters if you will, because you bring up very valid points. Starting with what I've learned myself, of what white people got from Ethiopians and other African groups. So starting there, the history of Christianity. People obviously throw out this again sidewalk term of, well, Jesus wasn't even a Christian. That didn't happen till later on. Let's talk. Let's go there.
Right.
In your opinion, or in your studies, how does Christianity get introduced to the African people and develop as this religion?
Well, one, keep in mind when people say Jesus was not a Christian, the word Christian really, man, was a derogatory name used for believers. Initially, they were considered believers, saints, or those of the way, right? Those of the way. So when they were called Christian at Antioch, what they were saying is, you all act like him. Your
Mm,
small him, your small crisis. Why? Because they were beginning to do the same thing that Jesus had done, right?
yeah.
And so that is the understanding of where the term Christian came from, as it was dubbed in Acts at Antioch. And then when you start thinking about the expansion of Christianity, you go back to Acts chapter 1, where Jesus said, "You're going to be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and then to the utmost parts of the world," right? And so Jesus' disciples, one suggests, I believe it was Thomas, who went down into Ethiopia, right? And then the gospel began to continue to spread from those veins, from those portals.
Hmm.
Those who came up to Jerusalem for the that was there during the Pentecost, right, when the Holy Spirit fell,
Yeah.
they saw the disciples speak with new tongues. They're getting saved. They take that and then they go back home. The Ethiopian eunuch meets Philip in the book of Acts. So you can see all of these interchanging, dissect or intersecting people who ended up crossing these paths, taking the gospel back to where they were, right? And this is
Hmm.
how the gospel is spread throughout
Yeah.
Africa. I think it's dangerous for us, man. I challenged somebody the other day as we were talking about a cross, right?
Yeah.
A cross. And they were asking, about the cross that we typically use. And then I told them, and then they asked about the Ankh, right? Because there's a church in the area that has the Ankh on the wall.
Right.
And I asked, why do we use their cross over our cross? All right.
Hmm.
The Ankh is the Ethiopian cross, right? Um, that came from Africa. That they use. The reason I suggest that to say that is because to highlight one over another, all right, is dangerous because we don't know if Jesus was crucified, watch it, on a lowercase t or a capital T.
Mm,
Some people suggest that it was a capital T. It probably demonstrated or was resemble more a capital T than a lowercase t. But then we argue over those things because it was made popular, right, by somebody. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so those things we got to be careful with as well. Um, but as always, we always highlight the dominant culture
Yeah.
over our own because we always want to be like them. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Think about it from this perspective. Even today, it's easier to find an African American in a church with a white pastor than white people in a church with a black pastor.
Wow. That is true. That is very true. Why is that?
One, because of how they view it, right? How we are viewed, right? African American pastors are not viewed as intellectually smart as white pastors,
Hmm.
but yet you have some of the most brilliant minds in the African American culture and kingdom, right?
Yeah.
Even Dietrich Bonhoeffer studied with African Americans in New York. And this was the theology that he takes back to Germany, right? And so all of these things happen and transpire, but we don't think about those things. Again, we always put ourselves in a subservient culture because of slavery,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Out of slavery comes these thoughts that we are not as equal to or better than, and so we ended up doing that. When you look at whites, they really don't want to be in it because it's uncomfortable for them.
Wow.
It's more comfortable for us to want to be around them than for them to want to be around us because they feel like they have to give up something, right? And that's the plague of slavery. The thought is after Abraham Lincoln fired slaves, not freed them, fired them, right?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, police officers start being created and all of these other things. Why? To bring slaves back into a place where they was subservient to the dominant culture, so they always know their place. And so we've always tried to be like them. So what do? We say we've made it when we moved out of our community,
Hmm.
right? So now you have no black community. Then you wonder why school systems are crushing, are being falling into shambles, right?
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, the school teacher looked like you. Most police officers in your neighborhood look like you. All of these things, and it does matter. Even today, it matters.
So would you say that fear plays a big part in that that difference of us? us not having the same fear that they have and being around them and not feeling like we have to give up anything, but maybe there's a difference in the view of them towards black people. Do you think that that's still like some ingrained fear that's still lingering?
Absolutely. Just get on the elevator, right? You get on the elevator, they grab their purse,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And sometimes I be sitting up thinking, like, what is grabbing your purse really doing? If I really wanted it,
If I want it, I mean,
you hold, and there's nothing you can do. What is holding
right.
your pockets really gonna do if I really wanted it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's the thought, so you know it's still there, right?
True.
Because again, the images that
Hmm.
were portrayed. This is why the language of Donald Trump, and I know we're not going there, or we might get there, whatever. It's so dangerous, right? Political language, how it's always cloaks racist tendencies, right?
Yeah.
When you start talking about all they want to come do, talking about Hispanics across the border, all they want to come do is rape your women, sell drugs, right?
Hmm.
African Americans should be cautious of this
Yeah.
because this is the blackface syndrome, right?
True.
After slavery, what do they want to do? After the Reconstruction, what do they want to do? They want to end up taking your jobs, taking your women, raping your women, right? Which
Yeah.
creates this fear among them. Okay, so once people have fear, people would do anything to protect themselves. Why? What's the first law of nature? Self-preservation,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm. Yeah. No, that's it's interesting how it feels like nowadays any conversation about racism, there's a certain name that will make its way to the table. I don't
You,
know.
you,
It's just
you know why it does it though, man? For real, you know why I think it happens for real, man? It's because I argue this heavily, right? Most African Americans are conservative in behavior and morality, right?
true. Very true.
However, because of the conservative racial context, we have a tendency to vote Democratic, right?
Yep.
Because they've proven that they're not about our freedom, if
Right.
you will.
Yeah.
And so now what they're trying to do is they're trying to hijack this whole piece, man, on abortion rights and all of that, as if they really care for life. All they care for, when you look at the numbers, all right, more white young girls are having abortions than any other group,
Hmm.
and the white population is dwindling, is declining,
Yeah.
right? So how then do you keep up the population? Okay, no abortions. Why? We're going to force you now to have the children. You see what I'm saying? So there's always an underlying agenda to their methods,
Yeah.
and that I think we have to be careful with.
No, that's very true. So do you when it comes to slavery movies, it feels like every some odd years there's like a new influx,
Mhm.
a reminder, if you will, of slavery movies. You get your Django's, you get your 12 years, you get your, they keep coming, right? You feel like that. Do you lean more towards the black experience side to say that that's needed to remind you of your history, where you're from, to be proud of what your people have come through and where we are now? Or do you lean more towards the opposite side where it's like a reminder of where you were and who brought you here and how you really weren't all that you might think you might be?
I lean toward, man, honestly, the side that says we need it, right? A person who forgets their history will always end up repeating it in the future,
Hmm.
right? Think about this, man. Think about this. After the Holocaust, the Jews came up with a slogan: "Never again."
Hmm.
Right? Never again. And so they keep the Holocaust in the
Powerful.
minds of the people as a next. African Americans are the only group that disengages ourselves from our history.
Wow.
And we wonder why we don't gain traction for what we believe, right? Because that's what brings us together, right? We ought to have a mantra: never again, right? I mean, we're never going to allow you to treat us like that again. We're always going to keep it in our minds. And as well as if they're going to take it out of the books, we have to demonstrate it somehow. And now, because again, education has decreased, right? And we put phones and TVs and all of these things in front of our students. Now what we have to do is we still have to educate them. So I think we should take over and start creating documentaries and movies to show the real side of slavery. If not, man, it's going to look like servitude. All right,
Yeah.
instead
Yeah.
of slavery. DeSantis said, slavery benefited African Americans,
Hmm.
as if to say we didn't know how to build before we got here,
Oh yeah.
as if to say civilizations, math, science, Africans were doing brain surgery
Yeah.
thousands of years ago. You see
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And so
Right.
all of these things are created in the belt of Africa, stolen from Africa and used. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we're crazy if we don't want those things shown. And I'm talking about continuously, more than just in the month of February,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, think about it. You can't say anything negative, even if it's true about a Jew. All right. You
That's
can't
right.
say anything negative. One of the things that I have an issue with is they won't allow you to say anything negative, but they'll allow records and things to go out with the N word and every other kind of word degrading African American community, but never themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so I say this, man, and without fear of contradiction, look at most of your or all of your news media outlets and tell me who runs them. They're run by Jews.
I that's kind of swings over to Kanye West. I find myself trying to be the Kanye West interpreter because oftentimes I feel like I can hear what the man is trying to say behind the rant, right?
Right,
And one thing he said recently that was very interesting. He said, "When I walk into a room and I tell them I'm a god, they look at me like, who does this guy think he is?" He's like, "Well, I told you who I was. I said I'm a god." And he said, "But they would have no problem if I said I'm an NIGGA,
right,
or if I said I'm a pimp,
right,
or if I said I'm a gangster.
right.
There'd be no issue with that." And
And
and it kind of proves your point. It's like there's a certain amount of imagery. There's a certain amount of stay in the box. There's fear of us kind of. I'm not saying you got to walk around saying you're a god, but standing in your own power and in your own truth and your own possibilities, right?
right. There's this brother, man, Naeem Akbar.
Hmm.
He wrote a powerful book that I read years ago called Chains and Images of Psychological Slavery,
Hmm.
right? His argument is one of the reasons why they make Jesus white is to help you fight through now the image of Jesus, right? And so even when they move the chains of slavery, now because you got the imagery of slavery still stuck in your head, it's hard to fight through that. Now you got to fight through that imagery as well. And it's hard for us to do that because most people identify Christ or God rather in their own culture,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Except African Americans,
Mm.
right? Again, because slavery put our color on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So much so until please look at up to schools, look at the census bureaus and all of those things. Most nationalities other than African Americans are considered black. I mean white,
White. Yeah.
ethnic,
Latino.
right?
Yeah.
Hispanics,
Yeah.
Hispanic but ethnicity white.
Yeah.
Uh, Asians, the Asian culture but their ethnicity white, right? Um, we're the only ones who are exempt from that, and we should be exempt from it.
Yeah.
But it does those things, man. Why? To boost the numbers and to create division.
So you said something earlier. You said that Christianity was also a vehicle for liberation. It's a beautiful line. Um, so in the idea of Christianity liberating us, but in America, the idea of our blackness, they had attempts of enslaving us, right? Even like you said, down the years, right? The invisible, the mental handcuffs that
Right,
are still present.
right.
Through your eyes as a pastor, how do the young people grapple with that truth? How do they grapple with I'm here, liberated through my Christianity. I've been, taught the Bible, and I'm going out into the world to with peace and love and this great energy in my heart. And then I get out there, and then I get fought because of my blackness. I get imprisoned because of my blackness. I get scoffed at because of my blackness. I'm supposed to hold up the armor of God, but I also have to walk in my blackness. What is your guidance to the youth on how to navigate that?
Wow, that's a powerful question, man. In that, in order to empower them to be their authentic selves, we have to give them a framework and a model to roll by, right? This is why, again, we have to be careful with how we allow things to be defined and determined, right? Meaning, um, everything that happens for a reason, right? Um, it's no secret why African American men was removed from the house,
Hmm,
right?
I don't know.
System of I'm not going to help your family unless he moves out, so I can't get help unless I'm single with
Yeah,
children, right? So
yeah,
you create this environment for that to happen, right? And so when I move this power structure from over you, now all of a sudden I can run rampant over your children, right? So
yeah,
how do I help my children? I have to help them by giving them a model to look at, which means we have to do a better job in our own community about bringing the family back. All right. We have to make, and I know this is going to sound crazy, we have to make heterosexual marriage sexy again,
mm,
right? We have to, man, because all of your statistics show and point to the direction that families are healthier, children are healthier when both the mom and the dad exist,
yeah,
right? And so we have to understand that and understand, at least as a Christian for me, that that is a foundational fact for me. Then number two, we have to challenge our children. Hear this, and I think this is more powerful, to rise up to the standard of our forefathers, right? Once we allowed, and I know most people are gonna knock me for this and the craze for this, along with the hip hop genre, right, and the negative connotation to music and all of those kind of things, the language that uses, the dress it uses. Now, all of a sudden, because of prosperity, we no longer have a struggle, right? So everybody now is looking for a dollar for themselves, and the community is lost. All right. And I think that's what we have to fight against is this
a
piece. Why?
struggle.
Because one won't make it unless we all make it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, that is what the Montgomery bus boycott was really about. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Those who had cars refused to drive, and they would drive. If they did drive, they would drive those who didn't have cars to work because they
mm,
wouldn't let nobody on the bus. Nobody, none of us are getting on those buses, right? Until we all can sit where we want to on the buses, right?
yeah.
And so now we don't have that struggle anymore. Why? Our children, for the most part, wear $200 tennis shoes, but our bank accounts are broke, right? Our children are now forced to grow up faster than they've ever done before. Why? Because now we push our kids out the door as soon as they can walk, almost, right? We don't allow them to have opportunity to be children, opportunity to seek and see what life has to offer for them and become whatever God is going to create them to be, right? We force them out and wonder why our children end up like they are, right? And then we don't teach our children boundaries or discipline, right? It's hard to do anything, man, with a kid that's not disciplined. Why? Because an undisciplined child becomes an unruly adult, right? How do you think you have the school to prison pipeline? You can't
Yeah,
have that with a disciplined mind,
right.
right? So how do they do it? What do they say? No spanking your child, no whooping your child, right?
Yeah,
See, they could tell little Johnny to go sit in the corner. Why? Because little Johnny wasn't bred to be energetic, right? He
mm,
wasn't bred to have energy, excitement. That's the only way you're gonna work in the field, right? Keep in mind, African
mm,
Americans were bred to be in the field, right? They were bred to be strong, to be fast, to have all of this energy. What did our parents do? Our foreparents do? They whooped you. They whooped you so master won't hang you, right? So now you have this kid with all of this energy, all of this brilliance, but brilliance and energy without discipline becomes destruction.
Hmm.
And so we are challenged in schools. It's
Right.
not that Johnny is bad, right? It's just that this teacher doesn't know how to tailor Johnny's energy that he has because he's bored,
Yeah.
right? Because what you're teaching him doesn't connect to what he want to be or doesn't connect to what he sees, right? So we
Right.
have to redo this idea of school as well, because school systems were only made to teach a person to show a better job and to do the same job repetitively.
So
That's
so
it.
then so then that equation that you just gave of energy and brilliance being able to lead to destruction or destructive nature if there's no outlet, right? You know, we can argue because of something that you just said that we've had the brilliance since Africa.
Mhm.
We had the energy since Africa, long before we were being bred as enslaved people. We our nature had us in the same strength and speed and active components that led to us being sad to say it, good at what we did at being enslaved people as well.
Right.
So if you're, because I don't disagree with you as far as like we need to change the structure of school. I've been preaching that for a long time. So what were the Africans doing that was different? What were they raising the youth to be when they had that same brilliance and that same energy? When they were looking at, you know, their elders doing the dynamic things that they were doing in medicine and mathematics and travel and in markets and all these things, how were they grooming and educating the youth then? Do you know?
I think you just answered the question, right? How were they looking at their elders? How were they looking at their elders, right? They
Hmm.
had models, right?
Mm,
And their models placed on them discipline,
yeah.
because that's the third leg we got to deal with. Not only do you have to have brilliance and energy, this discipline has to come into play,
Right.
right? So
Right.
they were taught, man, that when you had a skill, your skill was to benefit your community. You brought your food back to the whole community, right? So you were responsible with what you were doing. You ain't have time to fool around. You ain't had time to just, blow, right? You wasn't playing video games all day trying to become, the next great video game player. Why? Because you had to figure out, how do I bring my skill set back to feed my household, right?
Right.
Everybody had a part to play in it. And we no longer teach those things, right?
Yeah.
We teach our kids to the now I'm a college believer. I believe in college, right? Hear me when I say this. I'm still in school, right? After what? Two earned master's degrees. I'm in a doctoral program now, right? And so I push school,
Hold on,
but
let
at
me
the
give you
same
something.
time, school for some people, no, don't leave me.
You deserve that. You deserve that.
School is not meant for everybody, right?
Facts. Facts.
We need plumbers, we need janitors, we need concrete workers, skyscraper builders, right? All of these crafts, man, are you auto mechanics and all of those kind of things. You don't need a college education for, right?
Yeah.
Which blows my mind, because we try to push everybody into that field, everybody
Everybody.
into that way. And
Everybody.
here's the funny part: those other trades make more than those who are education,
That part.
right?
That
And
part.
so, but what we taught people is to the detriment of ourselves. And most of us is not going to college. Why? Because we don't have the discipline, not the
Yeah.
brain. We got the brain,
Oh yeah.
but we don't have the discipline to
Yeah.
stick with it for the most part.
Yeah. 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 And there's a certain, to me, I feel like there's like this unrivaled passion that like black people possess. Like when we find ourselves like emotionally connected to a cause, to some form of art, to a creative idea, like when we lock in, and then it takes a mind of its own. It's its own thing. Like we have, I don't know. It seems like our passion for things just goes haywire within us,
Right.
and it doesn't really happen in other people. Like when I hear in comparative ways how some of the students in Asian cultures are brought up, where they're told you're going to be this,
Right.
Your dad was this, your grandfather was this, your uncle, you're going to be this. And they can not only do it, but excel at it and do it for 30, 40 years.
Right.
Like we don't really do that. You know what I mean? We kind of need to, pun intended, break the chain, so to say, and kind of do our own thing. You notice that?
I totally agree with you. We do allow our kids to do their own thing, but what I think we should start doing though, man, is give our children choice within boundaries.
Mm,
Right? Um, why? Because you're gonna have to do something.
yeah.
You got to be creative at something. You're gonna have to do something. You just can't be nothing. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Give me a plan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we have to challenge our children by teaching them how to live within strict boundaries because outside the lines are dangerous.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not talking about becoming what somebody wants you to become. Right? Break those stereotypical boxes, but also understand that there is a box you still have to play in this thing called life. Right? When you
Yeah.
operate outside of those boundaries, then destruction hits. And I think we have to be careful, again, because of how we raise our kids now, right?
Yeah.
We raise them to be thinkers of free thinkers and all of that, but you can't do it without. I keep going back to this without the discipline.
Yeah.
You have to discipline the child, or you
Yeah.
have. And I'm not always talking. I'm not talking about spanking and that kind of stuff, right? But you
Right.
have to give them discipline. Why? Because if I can't sit still, I can't be educated,
Mm,
right? Before there is the hands-on part, there has to be a book part.
yeah.
You're gonna have to sit down and teach me something before you allow me to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, and a lot of kids now then don't catch it, right? Because a lot of our parents are now the same way.
Mm,
You know what I mean? We have to really do something about the parent. I think maybe that may need to be a conversation you need to have, uh, because I see parents going down to the school willing to fight children.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
had a parent one day, man, that came to a school I worked at. A parent came down to fight a first grader. Yes, you understand? And so those are the things we have to deal with in our
I hope
culture.
you had a really, really good reason. Like, I don't know what the reason could be. I'm
You know,
just,
little kid spats. You know what I mean? These little kids, man, fight or whatever. And then the parent come down and want to fight all that kind of stuff, man. It is ridiculous, man.
wow.
But again, we have to get back to what we do
Yeah.
in teaching, training. Um, because let me say, while I understand the construct of slavery and what is done, right?
Mhm.
I also think we have to start taking responsibility for ourselves, right? We put out things that destroy us,
Mm, yeah.
right? We put out, and I know you're a music buff. Trust me, you know more rap lines than I would ever think of. You know everybody there is to know. You know them all, right? But if if
Right.
if
Right.
we're honest,
Yeah.
what we call gangster rap,
Mm,
right, destroyed our community,
yeah.
right? Because
Eventually. Yeah.
especially when you start thinking about gangster rap comes on the scene at the same time crack is at its
Crack
peak,
does.
right? And so, how do I get rich quick? I get in the game, right? Now I'm in the game. Most of them in the game start using from the game. Then all of a sudden, prison becomes full,
Yep.
which was the real reason they start putting crack in our community was to fill up prisons. Why? Because slavery, thank you, Michelle Wilson Alexander, according to our Constitution, is the only legal form. I mean, the prison is the only legal form of slavery now,
Slavery.
right? And those are the things we forgot. So they got free labor out of them,
Yeah.
right? And so then private prisons comes on the scene, and they say you have to have your prisons filled with the maximum of so many people. So judges now start sending people to prison for foolish crimes. That now they say you ain't going to prison for a while. Here's the funny part: because you have a record for selling marijuana, you can't open a marijuana dispensary. Now you got the skill and the know-how, but now you can't open one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're gonna keep you there.
You feel me?
Keep you right there. Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Those.
then they tell you smoking it is legal, right?
Mm,
But what they don't tell you is you can still be fired from your job with it. They still testing you.
yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
all of those things, man, and we have to be wise about that, and again become more disciplined,
Yeah.
right? Because we're making other people rich.
It's true. And I love the idea of discipline because what you just said about um, giving the kids choices, but within certain parameters, right? It reminds me of a conversation with a guest I had that I actually wanted to. I think I told you in our last episode I wanted to have you guys on together. I think you and a couple other people, because he has done a lot of research on the how the United States pays other countries reparations.
Hmm.
Like to today, like multiple
Hmm.
countries still getting reparations for, I mean, from the United States, countries that deserve it, rightfully so, but
Why?
haven't
Why
dealt
do
with
they deserve?
nearly.
Why? Here's the question I would ask though: why do they deserve it?
Well, in the idea of, let's say if we bombed them, and there was um, catastrophic destruction, and not all of it was militaries. We didn't have as accurate tactics before, where we can just knock out that one base or that one fueling station. It was like, okay, all of y'all got to go. And then we go back and try to build the area up, and obviously we're building them for our own reasons, right? There's probably some trade that's in there. There's probably some economic benefit that we know is going to come down the road. But whether it be let me not say who gets reparations, because he told me three countries, but I don't remember exactly who they are, and I don't want to speak out of term. But what I did want to say is, before you tell me why, because I got a feeling you got something on that right there, is this idea of discipline. When they get this money, they actually have their own banking systems, right? And in their banking systems, they have business loans that you can get when you come to America, or if you're already here, right?
Hmm.
But it's only for their people. This ain't no. We can't go in there and get the money, right?
Right.
However, the criteria is minimal, right? And certain things that you have to do, certain studies you have to do, there's certain, whatever. It has nothing to do with money. There's certain things that you have to show that you're ready to take on this money. And then with that, there's a list of businesses that you have to embark upon. You can't just get it and go create a film studio.
Right.
This is why you see nail salons, beauty supply. They have these
Hmm.
specific, convenience stores. They have
Right.
specific businesses that if you're going to go to one of these businesses, you can get the money. And then we have very favorable payment plans, and then, to help you build. And that's how their communities continue to build. But when you said giving people freedom, but within certain lines, that's the first thing it reminded me of. But let's
Right.
talk about reparations real quick. Are we gonna get it? And should anybody else be? Who deserves reparations?
Well, let me say this. I can't say who deserves it, but I would say if the African American don't know, nobody does.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed.
Um, the argument for reparations I have, all right, is giving reparations shows the damage that was done to the humanity that was there.
Mm,
Right.
yeah.
Not giving African Americans reparations demonstrate they don't see us as human. Right. And that is the dangerous. That's why I asked you the question: why do they deserve it? Right. Um, and I say that because here's the natural structure for my argument, at least. Right. While they bombed their buildings and killed their lives, they still left them with their history and their culture. That's what was taken from the African that we often overlook: culture, history. The
Yeah.
reason they call us African Americans is because they place us on a continent, not a country.
Right. Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And within that, when once we came to the new land, so to speak, we joined together by race,
Yeah.
by color, rather than by tongue,
True.
right?
Yeah.
And so we were forced to learn a new culture. This is why you see a Hispanic dressed in their normal native garb, you don't say anything.
Yeah.
You see an Asian walk down the street in their Asian garb, you don't say. You see a Native American walking down the street in their, you don't say anything, right? You see an Irishman, right, wearing green, you don't say anything. But let an African American wear a dashiki or anything, you look at him like he's crazy. And we do that as well to ourselves, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
We
and
be the
so
main ones
right,
nowadays.
you know what I mean. Therein is because we
Yeah.
don't have the culture
Right. Right.
from our
Right.
history,
We've been
right?
separated from it.
We've
Yeah.
taken away from that, and so that's why I make the statement about it, man. Because we really have to reparations, because we really have to be careful, and that we don't give our own humanity over. Uh, it is only for the African American, the slave, that is less than human in the
Hmm.
Constitution.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying? And so that's why we have to start thinking from that perspective.
And so it makes sense. And the reason I said I didn't want to say who it was and or even speak on if they deserve it or not is simply because a lot of it comes from war, as we know, right? It's
Mhm.
usually the aftermath of war, but the story is told by the victor. So the
Yeah.
story of war is always told a certain way to American children. So I always feel like I don't really know how they talk about the war. I don't really know what they lost.
Right.
We talk about the American soldiers that died in the Vietnam War.
Hmm.
We don't really get into how many businesses or generations or churches what they lost. We just talk about kind of what we lost. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so because of that, I don't really know the loss of humanity that they might have suffered.
Right.
It's hard for me to really weigh it out because I don't really know the details. I'm still learning the details of our own people, let alone someone else's. And so it is tragic, though, that at least what I do remember is that the majority of the people that he spoke about um, largely live in another country, in another
Hmm.
on another continent.
Hmm.
There is an immediate benefit to the American public for giving black people reparations that live in America. I mean, you're literally fueling the same economy in which you live in.
Right.
Yet,
And your fuel at a faster pace, because we're gonna spend it. We're gonna spend it.
that's why I loved his idea because I'm like, oh, if that's what they do, that's what we need to do.
But keep
That's
in
what
mind what
we
you
can't
just keep
just
in
give
mind
it
what you
out,
said though.
card and a black card.
I guarantee you, the business that they're creating are going in the black communities, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um, so
I
all
wouldn't.
the
I
places you
wouldn't.
name,
That's not on the fine print of the list.
all the
You
places you
got to open
name,
this in a black community.
we end up patronizing, right? Giving our dollars to, because we don't understand the power of those dollars,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
Again, when they took our communities, right? That's the thing they didn't tell us, man, is the depth of the wound that would be there, right?
yeah,
Um, again, all of so many things may happen that we don't think about, right? My father fought in World War II. My father's 103, right?
beautiful.
And so he fights in World War II, comes back to the States, and he can't benefit like the white soldiers and buy a house,
Mm,
right? The way they did,
we've
right?
heard.
Many of them, the fastest way to gain wealth, right? Wealth creation today started for most people from real estate,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And because most African Americans were not allowed to buy, and or their houses were taken, right, or they were redlined to the districts that were created by crushed their value of their property. right? They were not allowed to move away or build upward momentum, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And so those kind of things, man, you end up looking at and dealing with, and you have to be again, you have to be careful again, right? Why? Because we tend to think that we don't make it because we're doing something wrong. Sometimes we do have to identify the systems that are in place,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so Dr. King is not killed because of his dream. Dr. King is killed because he's becoming more radical in his approach. If you listen to Dr. King and Malcolm X later on, their final speeches and things, you start to discover that Malcolm X was becoming more peaceful like Dr. King, and Dr. King had become more radical like Malcolm X, right?
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
so when you start understanding that, Dr. King started talking about how this American dream was not really a dream, right?
Yeah.
He even himself said he feels like he sent his people into a burning building, right? Why? Because when we desegregated, we lost, not them, we lost more than they ever did.
Hmm. Okay. Let's in trying to double back to these intersecting identities. We've talked about how uh, white people were uh, given and learned of Christianity through Africans. However, though one of the more popular religions in Africa, it wasn't the only religion in Africa. So, in your opinion, and I know you, so I kind of know the answer, but in your opinion, what makes Christianity the religion that black people should move forward with?
One is, man, because I think it separates it from the very nature of others in that it's the only one that really should not be classified as a religion,
Hmm.
right? It's the only one that should be classified as a relationship. The
Hmm.
true definition of religion is man's way of finding God. In Christianity, we don't find God, God finds us, right?
Pastor
Um,
Reggie Brown talking.
that we
That's the,
don't seek him, he seeks us. You know what I mean? Christianity, man, is the only religion where the Savior dies for the people,
yeah.
where the God became flesh and dwells among us. You
Amen
know
to
what I
that.
mean?
Yeah.
And so I often tell people if you have 20 world religions and one of them say something against the other 19, one of them have to be right and the other 19 wrong, but they both can't be right. All of them can't be right.
That's a fact.
And so I think we hold on to Christianity because of heaven, but I also think we hold on to Christianity, man, because it has the greatest message for on earth.
Hmm.
Our problem is we pick and choose the Jesus we want to listen to, right? Jesus says, by this shall all men know you're my disciples, if you have love one toward another,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Jesus made sure his disciples understood that they were connected with one another, that they couldn't do without each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so our fight should be to understand where we are as a people. See, this is the beauty, man, of how Christianity intersects, especially with the African American, with the cultures around, right? Because African American Christians are not arguing that African Americans are better than and should receive some better treatment, right? What we're saying is we should be equal to and receive the same treatment. Bring the level of our treatment up, not above you, but equal to it.
Hmm.
Let's even the playing field, right? That's our argument, right? And so that's what we are preaching for a similar life on earth, right?
Hmm.
Like that one that's going to be in heaven,
Yeah.
right? You know what I mean? You're not going to serve God on the black side, and they're not going to serve God on the white side and the Jewish side, right?
Yeah.
We're all going to be serving God together. And
Yeah.
so we're asking for this uplifting idea of bringing us to an even playing field. Because once you, here's the scary part. Every time they even the playing field, we end up rising to the top.
Hmm.
Every right? Sports is a great analogy of that, right? Look at any sport, any sport. You can't hardly find a sport when they even the playing field, the African American doesn't rise to the top,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's basketball, football, golf, which is considered the whitest of white sports, right?
Yeah.
And so once we really get into ice skating, that's going to be done, right? So hockey is going to be off the hook once we really get into it.
Was really good.
If we get to the place where we like cold weather, it's off the hook. It's crazy, right? That's why we're not into it. We don't like skating on ice. It's too cold.
Right, right, right.
But you see what I'm saying, though?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
absolutely.
that's my argument for Christianity, man. Christianity is the holistic religion.
Yeah.
It's the holistic relationship we have with God, that God loves us so much that he becomes like us to die for us,
Hmm.
right? Then empowers us to live better in him.
Okay, so I think this will be the last question. Um, Black people, for years, as you know, we've demonstrated in this conversation, have been, persecuted and ridiculed and spat on and killed and enslaved and imprisoned and beat and maimed. I mean, the list goes on. If I just said that list of things, the first identity that would pop in your head would probably be a black man before it was, a Asian woman or a South American child. It's like, oh, you're probably talking about a black guy, right? In America. Let's make that make that distinction here in America. So throughout time, black people have tried in different ways and different um, manners to fight back, to stand up, to overcome. Sometimes, as we talked about with Martin and Malcolm, it's positive and it's peaceful and it's protest and it's you know standing up and speaking to each other in a way to say we need to unite, right? Peacefully. Other times, it's you feel like your hand is forced. You feel like now I have to fight back. You're not sticking this dog on me no more. I'm fighting back. You're not spraying me with that hose no more. I see you reaching for it. I'm fighting back. Cop, no, no, no. You're not taking me to that back alley. And no, 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 I'm fighting back. When it goes that direction, are we still being Christian like?
But is fighting back being Christian like?
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. You gotta fight and be a Christian. Jesus said, I
Talk
came to
about
bring
that.
you
Talk about that.
Jesus said, I came to bring not peace but a sword,
Mm,
right? One of the things we forget about scripture, man, is for God, righteousness is treating your brother right,
yeah.
right? For God, righteousness is speaking up for those who have no power to speak up for themselves.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Now, what I will say is this: I think as African Americans, we have to start fighting differently. We can't keep going out here putting guns in our hands to fight, right? Now
Hmm.
we got to fight by building our own infrastructure. You know what I mean? Say what you want to, man, about Dr. Umar Johnson, right? The one thing that he says, man, that I agree with. I don't agree with his religious stuff, but the thing that he says that I agree with, right? That blacks have to bring certain industries back to their community:
Hmm.
education, hospitals, and banks,
Hmm.
and grocery stores, right?
Yeah.
Once we start building those things up, why do you think Black Wall Street is taken out,
Right.
right? Because they didn't need wealth from anybody. It was suggested they had their own airport, right? Own bank,
I don't know if I knew about the airport. I
right?
knew about the rest. I don't know if I heard about the airport.
If I'm not mistaken, they had their own. If I'm not mistaken, they,
Wow.
they had their own bank,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So all of these things they had, man, we have to start doing the same. Why? Because money is power,
True.
right?
True.
So once we start investing in ourselves and stop using this idea of your prices are too high. I've never seen anybody walk in a store and say, "Can I have $20 or $50 off these Jordans?"
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Uh, I ask for discount on everything else, but when it comes to us, we want to get a discount, not recognizing that we have to pay more because we don't buy as much.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's why our markup is so high, because of what we have to pay for the product, because we don't do business with us,
Yeah.
right? We would rather do business with somebody who talk behind a mask, who degrade us in a different language, than to do business with us.
Ouch.
because we don't want to see each other rise, right? We're rather breaking each other's houses and take what you have instead of working with you to get more, right? Because we don't like doing business with us.
Mm.
So what we have to do, man, is what I appreciated about Malcolm X is we have to start loving ourselves enough to understand that I don't make it until you do.
Yeah.
That I don't become all I can become until you become what you could become. Because we are interconnected.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when we start understanding the value we have with each other, then we can start building the community we need for each other. Be, what is his name? He's a comedian that went and bought his whole neighborhood back up. He played in All About the Benjamins with Ice Cube. Mike Epps.
Mike Epps.
Yeah, Mike Epps, right? Mike Epps goes and buys his whole community back, right?
Hmm.
Wouldn't it be powerful, man, if we go and buy communities? And we can't say we don't have the money.
At all.
We have buying power. I'm talking about real buying power,
Yeah.
right? But we
Yeah.
rather blow it, man, on things that depreciate cars and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay. I thought it was going to be the last question, but then you
Yeah,
said
go
that.
ahead on it,
Okay.
bro.
Okay. 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 Because that as an idea is always you know, this beautiful rendition of what black people do when they finally find um, high levels of wealth and influence and power in whatever space that they occupy. However, we have history showing us that oftentimes when those same people don't get out, they don't leave that neighborhood fast enough. They don't relocate into them other safer neighborhoods fast enough. And let me skip from that just for a second, but also to say we look at it like we want to create the best circumstances for our children. So a lot of times we're looking at the school zone.
Right.
What's the level of the school, the levels of the grading of the school, the levels of the education, the programs that they have in place, the safety on the schools, all of these things, because we want to provide well for our children. And so then that kind of forces us to move into the right zip code so that our children can occupy those seats in those particular schools. So for those reasons, how do I become the multimillionaire? How do I have $380 million liquid in my account? I got enough to buy up this and that. I got credit galore. I could snap my finger and buy up a few apartment complexes. However, I bought one duplex here, and before I can get the contractors in there, they done vandalized it already.
Right.
They
Again,
done broke the windows out. How, how,
again,
how do I do that?
again, therein lies the problem we have with ourselves, right? Because we don't understand who we are and our own worth. It goes back to what I was saying. We would rather rob you
Hmm.
than to support you,
Yeah,
right? We,
yeah,
we, we would rather take yours because for somehow or another we found it easier to be lazy than to be liberated, right? We found it easy, man, to be destructive rather than to be developers,
hmm.
right? And
Yeah,
and I think that becomes a challenge that we have to face and we have to deal with, a challenge that we have to start talking to straight up, right? And I believe it goes back to bringing the family back together, right? Why? Because when you have strong men, a strong male presence, you have less behavioral problems with children,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
And so we have to start dealing with a whole piece that we bring back to a central place and move out from that point, right? Because it would be foolish for somebody to go try a lot of these things down in your neighborhood when you have people in your neighborhood who's going to rob you,
Yeah,
right? And then we have to fight on the political front because we have to change the whole educational system, and the only way to do that is to change one how schools are funded.
hmm.
See, the average person don't even know how schools are funded,
Yeah. I
right?
definitely don't.
Schools are funded through property taxes.
Hmm.
So that's why schools in your whiter neighborhoods are better. Why? Because whites are worth more. Whites tend to buy, but African Americans and poor people tend to rent. Right? You see what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so all of these things and the houses in those areas are less valued because they're apartments over houses.
Yeah.
All of these things, man, matter. And then those schools get more money. And what should be done is the money should be broken down and spread across the board evenly. And then
Yeah.
that way you create spaces where one school is not disenfranchised to the level and the degree it is over another.
And so, I don't know if you know this, but you brought up a great point about how schools are funded. So, if I live in Orange County, or maybe more people know Beverly Hills, I live in Beverly Hills, but and I own a home there. Home is worth $5 million, but I own several apartment complexes in well, Compton ain't cheap no more, but what people think Compton is, right?
Right.
And those buildings are worth $15 million each. When I'm paying property tax on that building, is that money going towards my Beverly Hills, or is it going towards the zip code, the school that's in
It,
the zip code of
I
that
believe it
building?
goes to what where the zip code is, but keep in mind now because it's a business, it's taxed differently.
Yeah, it is different. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep. Great
Um,
point.
so again,
Great point.
it goes back to that guy you talked to. You said we talk about every time we talk that guy that was in the White House
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
keep African Americans and people are so foolishly not African American, but people are so foolishly trying to get back into the White House again.
Hard.
Right? Think
Hard.
about this. You're seeing less money in your check now, right?
Mhm.
You saw more a couple years ago, but less now. Why? Because when Donald Trump got into office and he signed the tax cuts, remember the tax cuts for the middle class and below had an end date on it. The tax cut for the wealthy didn't have an end date.
Hmm.
So they keep their tax cut, we don't.
And so now they can blame that on Biden.
And Biden,
Of course,
because
that's what they're doing.
but please tell them go back. Tell them go back and look up the Donald Trump tax cut. That's all you got to do. Go. Don't believe anybody. Go read it for yourself,
For
and
yourself.
you'll see that he had an end date on the tax cut if you made so little. But for the wealthy, it had no end date.
Well, I hate to say it because I had my guy on here who was a strong supporter of that man, and we read through indictments, and um, we went to the Constitution, we went to all these legal documents to understand some of the ideas that he spews out, right, and what he can do and what he can't do, and how he can classify a document whenever he wants because he's a president. And after going through that for hours with this guest of mine, who's a really good friend, I realized that you're not changing your mind on him. And
Right.
I asked him, I said, so basically, I mean, he could be found guilty. They could have all the evidence. He could have all the closest people around him testify and say, you know what, yeah, he did do that. And you still would not believe it. And he said, yeah, I probably wouldn't. So I'm saying that to say you're saying telling people to go and read it. The people that would believe you don't need to read it because they probably trust you. They can hear your intelligence, your research at this point. And they're like, no, he ain't just gonna just throw out something he don't know. The people that don't believe you, they ain't reading it because they don't want to be proved wrong. They want to
I,
sit.
I totally agree with that. But here's why I say go read it, man. Here's why I say go read it. At least you can't say you don't know.
Hmm,
You know what I mean?
that's key.
As a matter of fact, when you were talking to him, I wanted to ask you, can you bring me on? Because there were some things I wanted to share and say, because I just want to know why,
Yeah,
right? If you know a person is lying, right? Why would you date a woman that continues to cheat on you,
right.
right? If that answer is no, if you found out your wife would lie to you, what would you do?
Yeah,
So you mean to tell me now this guy is more important to you than all of these?
yeah,
You see what I'm saying?
yeah.
Because there has to be a breaking point, even for him, even for this. You know what I mean? We can go into, that's a whole nother issue, whole nother story
Right, right.
about why.
So I don't
Uh,
even know if you heard because I think I brought up something like that to him, and I think the idea was if because I think he actually brought. I think he said if if people at a school keep telling you your kid is doing blah blah blah, but you know your kid, and they keep saying it all the time, after a while you're gonna be looking at them like, okay, y'all just don't like my kid. Y'all just got something against my kid. And so I said, well, I don't know because if I know my kid, and but you're telling me that now everybody's saying something. Every teacher, every school he go to, every principal, they all got the same thing to say. Eventually, I'm gonna have to look back at my son and go, hey,
Right, right. Because here's what happens. Here's what I think they fail to realize.
hey.
You know your kid around you.
Exactly.
You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
That part. The same way
You
that
know,
the supporters do. They know him in front of a microphone. They don't know him behind the closed doors when
right.
he's the other
Look,
stuff he's
in front of a microphone is too much, but okay.
right.
I think he's one of the dumbest people that ever lived, and I'm telling you, I say that with all sincerity.
Right. I'm with
But
you.
but
Pastor,
but he's managed to get that good media going for him. You know what I mean? Because for
oh man.
him, any media is better than no media.
Hey, it's the Hitler way. You know, Hitler said that a long time ago. You want to
Right,
control the people, control the media. One of
right,
the first things he did was create a film company. He had newspapers, commercials, films. He was a master at it. He knew his
right.
songs. They were singing to the Fleur. I mean, he had the whole. He had it wrapped up, and so he has definitely walked down the same footsteps of if I can just I celebrate the media that says the right thing about me and I get you to love them. They're the truth. And
Right,
then the media says something wrong about me. I call them fake. And if you rock with that, I got you.
right.
I got you.
Right. Yes,
Pastor,
indeed.
it's always a good conversation with you, brother.
Yes, indeed. I can do it for hours and hours, man. I promise you, I
I
can.
always hate to end it with you, but I want to be respectful. I'm pretty sure your stomach is growling or something. You might have something else to do. I don't want to be the reason that you
Right.
couldn't get to your thing for the rest of the night. But I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us and sharing yourself and your knowledge and your ideas with us. I know anyone listening has been greatly benefited from just sitting down with you today. I appreciate you,
Thank
guys.
you so much, my brother. I really appreciate you, man.
Always.
Always, anytime you need me, I'm here for you, my brother.
We will have you back. And I said it before, I'm gonna make sure I have it. I'm gonna get you back on with my guy so we can have that conversation. It's gonna be
Please, please do. I want to have it just to laugh, my brother. I promise you. I want to have it just to laugh. You know what I mean?
I
Um,
got you. I got you.
yes,
We
indeed.
gotta speak you gotta speak the truth. You know what I mean? Like some people just need to hear it and they may need to hear it a few different times, but we're always in prayer that, when you go away and when you're by yourself and when nobody else is around, you can't lie to yourself.
Right.
You can't lie to yourself, and hopefully all that truth starts to seep in and go, man, maybe they have a point.
And one of the things I think, man, that we have to stop doing though is, and I appreciate you for this is what I appreciate about you and your pod is that you allow different voices,
Hmm.
different opinions freely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's important, right? Whether you disagree with them or not,
Right.
agree with them or whatever, is not the issue. We have to create spaces where it's okay to conversate and to disagree,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Without being unhealthy, right?
True.
We should be able to disagree and we still be boys,
That's it.
right? We're gonna disagree and we're gonna go out and eat dinner afterwards, right? That
That's
that's the beauty of WWE wrestling. It used to be back in the day, at least,
yeah.
right? They would get in the wrestling ring and beat each other up, and then they would go out and party together,
that's
right?
it. That's it.
That's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to be enemies, man, because we have disagreements because you believe in this person or that person.
Right.
I think we have to stop vilifying people, man. So I want to congratulate you, man, on what you're doing. I'm hoping, man, that you literally, man, will continue to blow up like crazy, like you are,
Thank you.
because your voice is needed.
Thank you.
You bring so many topics to the table, so many genres to the table. Like I said, you know music like crazy. And not only do you know music,
Yes.
man, you bring music to the mainstream with your dialogue.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think you have to continue to do that, man, and continue to bring people in. Again, and I'm hoping and praying, man, that you will continue to expand, man. That I have not seen, ear has not heard what
Hmm.
God has in store for you, my brother. That when you continue to keep your hand in His hand and your face toward the
Yeah.
right thing. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
believe God is going to open up every door you need open, man, and pour
Thank you,
you
sir.
out that blessing that won't be room enough to receive it.
Thank you, sir. I
So if y'all
appreciate it.
listening to this, I don't think he ever put it up, at least since I've seen it online.
Yeah.
The moment he starts putting his cash app up or whatever form of payment up, y'all, I want to sow into him
Mm,
like crazy. Why? Because all of the things he's doing, um, think about this. His studios, he had to pay for it.
mm,
His computers, he had to pay for. His microphones, he had to pay for. And so the study, he has to pay for. And so I'm asking you all, hear me. The moment he starts putting it up, let us support him. Let us get behind him 100% and sow seed into this ministry, into this place. Even if you don't agree with everything he says, hear this. You want to be with a person who allows different voices because one of the voices he's going to allow to come on is going to speak to you.
mm.
That's why you need it. All right. And so please, y'all, do me that favor. Do that for me. And let's tune in. Bro, I'm asking you to, whenever you get a moment, please put up the times you come on, when you come on, and we're going to share it like crazy.
Okay.
All right. Not just my episode, but I'm talking about, listen, we need to share every episode like crazy and watch it, boost the numbers up, get the numbers where they need to be, so that the industry can start paying him for things like this. Because again, you have all of these conversations, and not many of them about you. He
Mm,
brings it and makes it about you and not about himself. Y'all
mm,
better stop playing with me. Stop
mm,
playing with me. Stop playing with
mm.
me. Stop playing with me. Stop playing, y'all. Stop playing.
Woo! All right, there it is.
Thank you for that, my brother. I
There it is.
appreciate it.
The word is here. The word made life. Thank you, sir. Thank
So
you. I
get your.
appreciate
I don't know if you got it ready. Get your cash app, man, and stop putting your cash app up there.
you. Okay, we'll
You
do.
don't have to ask. You don't have to ask anybody for nothing, man. But if they see it, I'm hoping and praying you don't have to ask. We'll pour into it without you asking.
Respect. Thank you, brother. Love you for that.
Love you, man.
All
I
right, my
bless y'all.
guy.
Thank you again, y'all.
I'll holler at you.
Blessings.
Peace out. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been The Pod is Good, episode 55. My man, Pastor, he touched me right there at the end. I pray that everybody was blessed from this. That was a powerful conversation with great insight and some history, some forward thinking, some revelation. I mean, that was a beautiful episode, a beautiful conversation that I know will continue to grow. You might be growing the conversation in your own head or whoever you're listening to this episode with, because that that's kind of what these kind of conversations do. They plant seeds and allow us to grow with them. So if you enjoyed the content, please follow, subscribe, like, share, anything that you feel. Whatever thing. I mean, they all free. You pick one, pick two, you do it. Your call. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. But once again, I'm your man, Cashmere, California. This is the Pod is Good podcast. And I'll catch y'all on the next episode. With that being said, I'm out.